What is happening, everybody? I'm Larry Roberts.
And I'm Sarah Lucy, and this is Brandon, your comprehensive guide to creative branding.
And on this episode of the podcast, we have an amazing guest with us once again that's going to talk about one of my favorite things, and that's PR. How do we get PR? Because earned PR is one of the best ways that we can build our brand and really get it out in front of new audiences, bigger, broader audiences. But sometimes it's hard to get that again, earned PR. So Aquila Mendez Valdez is the founder and CEO of, and we love the name of the company, Haute in Texas. Because if you've ever been in Texas during the summer, you know it's very, very hot. However, it's spelled a little differently, so we're going to play with that a little bit. Haute in Texas is a full-service PR and marketing agency that specializes in helping small to medium-sized businesses propel and curate their online and in-person presence. So with that, Aquila, thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you guys so much. I'm excited to be here.
We're excited to talk to you because, when I did the intro there, I wasn't kidding. PR and earned PR is some of my favorite ways in order to get out there and reach a bigger audience. So talk to us a little bit about how you got in the PR business and how it's helped you build a brand.
Absolutely. So I went to college actually as a journalism major. I thought I was going to be a foreign correspondent and be in war-torn areas and was gung-ho about that for a couple years of my undergrad. And then slowly but surely kind of realized, I think I want a career that's a little bit more stable. I think I want a little bit more options and, potential to actually make a little bit of money. So I got pulled over to the dark side of PR a little faster. Most journalists start out and they give it 5-10 years and then they go into PR, and I just cut ties pretty quick and dove right in. So that was my undergrad.
That's funny though. You said the dark side of PR.
Yeah.
What's so dark about PR?
Well, we get a tough rap sometimes, when we learned about PR 101, one of the first examples of classic, PR spin kind of thing is when, the founders of PR told everybody that cigarettes were good for you and you're fine, incorporate it into your, healthy routine. And, that was literally one of the first examples of public relations. So
yes.
I feel like
I love that example. And I actually use that example in my book because the Marlboro Man is actually my mom's ex-boyfriend.
What? That's crazy. Yeah. Wild. I mean, he's charismatic. I get it. But
aren't some I think the fathers of PR too were Barnum and Bailey, wasn't it?
That's
Barnum?
a good example too of spin and, misdirecting people and, bait and switch kind of advertising or marketing tactics. So I think we struggle a lot with people thinking that PR is a lot of voodoo and you're just making bad people look good. And, we definitely don't adhere to that, but we have to fight against a lot of misconceptions for sure.
Yeah, when I was in college, I was a advertising and PR double major. I ended up dropping PR just because I didn't want to go through all the courses. But I remember thinking I could totally do PR. I can lie so easily. This is gonna be great. And then I took the class and there's a little bit more to it.
Yeah, it probably doesn't help that I'm a Gemini. I feel like we get a bad rap for being liars or two-faced, right? So I feel like I'm just doubling down on, struggling with image, which is ironic, but
love it.
That's so fun. And I love the correlation there between journalists and PR. One of the biggest PR firms here in Dallas is Real News PR that's owned by a gentleman by the name of Jeff Crilly. And actually, Jeff is down in Austin as well. He just opened up a location down there, and he's a good friend of mine. And he was on, I don't remember which network, was it Fox? I think he was on Fox News here in the Dallas area for 20 plus years, and then he transitioned from that and launched a PR firm. So that seems to be a fairly common pathway for journalists to transition into PR.
Well, I feel like PR is kind of the liaison between businesses and journalists.
Right. Yeah. So I think
makes sense.
Make those switch. It's, we already know the inside of the newsroom so well. We have all the contacts, all the relationships. Now we can totally handle your PR and go that route. And absolutely, a lot of them do it very, very well. So it's a smart business move for them for sure.
So I love the fact that you focus on small to mid-sized businesses, because that's ideally where our listeners are in their growing their brand and growing their businesses. What are some of the things that small business owners can do to start getting some of that earned PR?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think that is, one of our passions to work with that level of business, because I always felt like if we worked with those enterprise level clients, it was always going to be so much bureaucracy. We're going to be fighting red tape to get any decision made, and, taking 6 months to move the ship and that kind of thing. So I love that a small to medium-sized business is much more nimble and open to moving fast and trying new things pretty quickly. So I think one of the easiest things to do is to start connecting with those journalists on, social media. A lot of them have like their preferred networks and platforms that they're on. And especially in a local market, a lot of them are very open to hearing from you and the community and learning what you have going on. Some will even, grab a cup of coffee. So as long as it's coming from a very genuine, authentic place, I think putting yourself out there as a small business is definitely feasible without that like massive, 6-figure budget.
Depending on where you live, like if you're in a big city, there's so many like news outlets. How do you choose which ones are going to be the best to reach out to? Because I mean, if you're reaching out to the biggest ones, you're going to be probably competing with a lot of people. The smallest ones, you might not get as many eyes. Like, how do you choose?
100%. I mean, I think like most things in marketing, PR, it all comes back to your target audience. So understanding your consumer really, really well, and understanding maybe they don't watch the evening news. Maybe that wouldn't even do any good for you to be, on that as well. Even though it would be a nice, soundbite, it wouldn't be where your customers are. So I think honing in on what type of media does your consumer or your target audience actually consume, and then, drilling down that those are your priorities. And sometimes that means, influencers that have sort of a news angle to their platform and they are presenting themselves as a local news outlet. Sometimes that means digital publications that don't have a print version, but they're also building a really strong audience that's in a little bit of a niche. But, we talked about that earlier, that niche audience can sometimes be way more potent than just a big splashy headline on a big name brand.
Well, that's typically where you end up starting too, right? I mean, it's kind of it's an evolutionary process with PR. You're not just going to end up on ABC right out of the gate, unless you're me. But if you're not me,
I was waiting for it. I'm like, he's gonna bring it up. He's gonna say
of course.
Did you know I was on ABC?
But hey, here's the thing, man. Even back when I was a couple of decades ago, I was still using local media up in Sherman Denison area. I would get on the local news stations there promoting karate schools, because I was a karate instructor back in the day, and get on there and do demos and talk about karate and the benefits for kids and blah, 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 blah. But I had that exposure on these smaller networks. Then eventually it's the same thing with speaking. I speak all over the country now, and Sarah does as well. And I personally started on virtual events. And I started on virtual events where I know literally no one was watching. So, but at the same time, it gave me that experience. It gave me that opportunity to hone my craft, to hone my skills, to hone my talks. And I eventually built up to being on some larger stages that are out there. So I think it's the same way with PR. And correct me if I'm wrong. Is it beneficial to start in something like a Voyage Dallas or some of these smaller online print opportunities, and then build your way up?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, again, just like running your own business, there's no such thing as an overnight success. And there's very, very rarely, going to be an example of somebody who is on the New York Times front page like day one of pitching. So I think absolutely when we're pitching clients that are shooting for those tier one publications, we really try to encourage them to kind of build up that, we call it like a sizzle reel, where we could show your portfolio of, here's them on camera. They're really great. They're really dynamic. This is how well they present their concepts. And then you're kind of building up to the point where you're considered by some of that larger media. And the other thing I think too is maybe don't look for a absolute like 100% feature on you and your business in a tier 1 or larger publication, but look for ways that you can be an opinion or an expert or referenced as the subject matter expert on something, where the journalist doesn't necessarily want to write the entire piece about you, but they need someone to just add that little bit of color commentary. And that's a wonderful way to be able to get your foot in the door, where the next time they are looking to do an actual feature, you're a name that's in their Rolodex, if we can still use that term, Rolodex.
I know what it is. I don't know if Sarah
I know what it is. But you said something about publications being in print, and I don't really know what that means.
Fair.
We used to put it on paper, like real paper. Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah. It was the craziest thing.
Terrible for trees.
Yeah.
Wild world. Yep.
So I have like a marketing, advertising, PR background, and I think that like advertising and PR should go hand in hand. And I love that you do PR and marketing. So when you do get, whether it's a small PR win or even a big one, you still I feel like there's still things on the marketing side you want to do to get more eyes on it. What do you recommend for that? Especially if someone does get just a small mention in a smaller publication, how do you really capitalize on that and get the most value out of it?
Yeah, 100%. I think that, initially when you have that mention in a news piece, it's okay to kind of let that breathe for a couple days and see, on its own, did it drive, a bunch of traffic? Did it drive people to call? Let it kind of see what it does on its own. But I do think for sure it's not enough to just expect that will be it. People want you to share about it on your own social media. They want it, especially if you can share some of the behind the scenes. They love to find out what was it like, backstage, and what was it like before you went on air. And, they want to see pictures and videos and all of that, kind of authentically taking them through the journey with you is really fun to share. So absolutely capitalize on it. Have content on your website that connects with the topic of the feature as well. Have your social media have a mention of the press coverage and highlight it and have it sort of in a easy to find spot. That's where, you really see PR take things to another level for you and your business, where you start getting that feedback and conversations of, man, I just see you guys everywhere. Like, you're killing it. You're doing amazing. This is wonderful. And it's just a handful of news pieces that can start to kind of drive people to think that you've got so much momentum going. And that's always a good thing.
So let me ask you this. We're talking about landing PR and getting out there and getting in front of people. But if we're not able to capitalize on these opportunities, they're going to fall flat. And if we are investing in PR and we're not prepared for that level of exposure, we're just throwing money away. So what can people do to prepare themselves for PR so that they are ready when that camera comes on or that article is being written? How can they train themselves to be ready for something like this?
Number one, the thing that comes to mind is make sure your website is ready. If people are going to start searching for you, and that goes for your social media too, but make sure your website is ready for that additional traffic and conversions. Is there an easy way to get those people on your email list? Is there an easy way for those people to contact you for a consult? Like, what are we doing to make sure that anybody that does discover you through this news piece, we're not just one and done. We're actually like roping them into our community in some way, shape, or form. And then the second thing I think would be to work with a PR agency or consultant, anybody in that publicist sort of role should be able to do some media training with you. Because again, if you're building yourself up to do this live TV segment, it's going to feel like you're just all of a sudden you're just going to be deer in the headlights and you blink and it's over. So you've got to be prepared with speaking points. You've got to be prepared to, be eloquent in your responses and really make sure that you've got those key points you want to get across. Because again, you're just going to blink and it's over. And then you're like, oh, I wish I would have said this, or, oh, I feel like I didn't, convey this very well. That takes a lot of prep work. And not very many people can just wing it.
Yeah, I've heard like people say like, okay, can you get me on like Joe Rogan, or can you get me on like the evening news and all this? I'm like, have you done anything yet? Because you don't want your first interview to be that. And I mean, I talk about this a lot with podcast guesting and starting with smaller shows, but I did the opposite and I started with some of the biggest shows. And I look back and I'm just like, can I send us like an apology note to the host? Like, I am so sorry I made a mockery of your award-winning podcast. You should not have let me on. I can come on now. I'll do fine. But that was a mistake.
But at the same time, Sarah, think back to all the training you had leading up to that. So although you may not have been prepared to be on a massive audience like Joe's show, right? But Stacking Benjamins, for some reason I couldn't think of it when I wanted to. So you may not have been prepared to be on a podcast that large, but you did have education in stage speaking. You did have education in being in front of audiences. You did know how to conduct yourself professionally. So although you didn't train specifically to be on a podcast, you were specifically able to stand up and present yourself in a very professional manner. And
I talked about a penis tattoo.
I wasn't going to go there, but yeah. So, but you did prepare yourself by getting shit-faced in Ireland and getting a penis tattoo. So you did a great job there too.
Thank you. My parents are proud.
That's one way to loosen up. Absolutely.
But, at the same time, it goes back to and this is why I was asking the question, because when I did get called for that first time that I was on ABC here in the Dallas market, I had 12 hours to prepare. I got called the night before. They said, hey, you want an ABC slot in the morning? I'm like, sure. They send me a script and I have all night long, which I stayed up till like 3 a.m, going through that script and preparing myself to be there at 6 a.m. and then get in front of one of the women that's been established in the Dallas market for 30 years. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm standing in front of Jane McGarry and she's asking me questions. And I don't know how many tens of thousands of people were watching, but I had been to Toastmasters for years and years and years. I had speaking experience in my back pocket. I had been on stages already. I had done thousands of podcasts already. So I had invested in myself to a degree to somewhat kind of be prepared for that. But you're spot on there in the fact that it's just over. I mean, I think we had a 6-minute segment and it felt like 6-second segment because it's just gone. You're there and I even had to call Sarah for that first one too, because they changed the questions when I got there. And they had a little gotcha question in there too that I'm like, oh my God, I have no idea how to answer this one. So I called Sarah, I go, what do I do? How do I answer this and not sound like an idiot,
Yeah.
So there's that preparation on the back end. And that's kind of what I was trying to get at with you there, how people can kind of prepare for that type of exposure.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you still said yes. I think that's a lot of, what we have to prep our clients for is there's going to be a lot of things when we really get the ball rolling, we're going to be tossing opportunities at you that are going to feel a little scary. And we need you to just be willing to trust us and say yes, and know that we'll prep you. We'll get you as ready as we possibly can. But if you're truly wanting to get your name out there, there's going to be some things I need you to do that are going to feel a little bit intimidating. And I promise it'll be okay. I promise we'll get you, through it. But just remember, you asked us to get you on TV. You asked us to get you, and when that moment comes, just say yes. It'll be all right.
Yeah. So it makes it's definitely scary, but I mean, I kind of get a kick out of it, and I think as people start to get these opportunities and they get bigger and bigger, you get that dopamine hit. You get that adrenaline rush when you're doing these bigger. Look at Sarah's like, no, I don't. No, I don't.
Nope. I black out a little bit. I want to cry and call my mom. Yeah, no.
Absolutely.
So when is somebody ready to work with you?
It's a great question too. I think, it's interesting. I just started reading a book, Who Not How. Have you guys read that before?
I know it. I haven't read it yet.
Okay. Self-explanatory title. It kind of talks about, instead of worrying about how to do something, just find somebody who can go out and do that for you. So kind of what we were just talking about, I think the right time to hire a PR agency is when you feel like you're ready to trust a who to handle that for you and know that they're going to do their job. They're going to be accountable. They're going to absolutely deliver on what they say they're going to do, but let them, really shine and handle that part of your business for you. And then I think too, we typically work with businesses where they've got a pretty established revenue, or that maybe they've got some funding, they're a startup, but they've got some, Series A, things like that. Once you're in that position, then it's not as scary to bite off a retainer of an actual PR agency. Mm-hmm. But, we're definitely, I think, understanding that as a small or medium-sized business, you need to feel secure that, okay, I'm going to be able to track what you guys are doing. I'm going to be able to, see some results or at minimum know what sort of traction we're getting and what's going on. So we don't mind being held accountable to that. But it's certainly a service where if you're going to be counting your dollars and worrying about every single cent, then you might not be ready for PR quite yet.
For those who aren't ready, that don't have that budget in place, what are a few like entry level steps that they can take for themselves? Like, how do you get yourself picked up by some local media?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like I mentioned earlier, I think, following those reporters and kind of building those relationships with them organically is not a terrible way to kind of get started and throw your hat in the ring for some opportunities. I also think, there's plenty of platforms online where you can, create an expert profile for yourself in that database for journalists to be able to find and podcasts to find, to, offer to have you as a guest because they're looking for, again, a very specific expert. And if you are the one who can speak to that subject for them, they're desperately needing to move fast and churn out multiple stories, every single week. So I think there's definitely opportunity to put yourself out there on those platforms as well and see some traction. The biggest thing I think where that gets challenging is you'll start to get overwhelmed with the amount of requests. And if you don't have the time necessarily to sift through, respond, follow up, that's where it's helpful to kind of have a team behind you to just handle all of that. And you don't even have to give it a second thought.
What's with the framed black rectangle on the background?
Right here? Wait, right here?
Yeah.
It's actually, so it's a local artist. His name is Albert. And you can't see it, but it's got like a very faint outline of a flower. And it's one of his series called Wabi Sabi. So yeah, it looks like a very inconspicuous black square, but I promise it's cool up close.
I was about to say he's very talented with the black rectangle. Very, very great edges. Yeah, no, I'm kidding. But anyways, I had to ask. I'm sitting here going, I don't get it. So I needed to get it.
Right up above, that would be the famous artist Aquila Mendez Valdez, who is my 9-year-old. So
that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Equally on par with, a local, name here.
But, I mean, I would definitely, based on what I can see in the video, I would give it to the 9-year-old all day. So, yeah.
We won't tell Albert. We won't.
No, I don't tell Albert. It's not a personal attack or anything, brother. It's just, that's just kind of what I'm seeing. Real quick, tell me some of the cautionary tales that would be out there from a PR perspective, because I mean, I've been hit a time and time again. Hey, for $2,500, we'll do this, and we'll get you here and we'll get you there. We'll do this and we'll write an article and you'll be the biggest thing since sliced bread. So what are some cautionary tales that you could share with us that people can avoid some of these, I don't know, they're not thirst traps, but just PR traps?
Yeah. I think the main thing that we always try to help people understand, and we talked about a little bit at the top of the segment, that, earned media is sort of how we define PR. And by earned, we mean that we didn't pay that journalist to write this story about you. It's not an advertising piece. It's not a sponsored piece. There's now, what we call like advertorials, where it looks very much like it's a editorial piece, but it was actually a paid piece. So that's usually when you've got those companies reaching out saying like, we've got Forbes and Inc. and Entrepreneur who really want to write about your type of business. They're just buying ad space in those publications, and then they're putting you into an advertorial segment in that publication. So there's a place for that if that is what you are wanting. If you just want to slap your name and be able to say, I was in Forbes, I was in Inc., I was in Entrepreneur, maybe that's a route for you, but just understand what it is exactly that you're getting. And I feel the same way about wire releases. So when people talk about, I can just put it out on the wire, right? Yes, you can, but all we're doing in that instance is basically syndicating your press release across the wire, which just means it's going out and being distributed to, hundreds of newsrooms across the country or region or whatever, parameters you set. But it is literally just being syndicated, copy, paste, put on a website. There's no, journalist that's saying, oh, absolutely, I'd love to talk to you, or I'd love to interview you, or, it's not building on any sort of relationships with those media outlets. So again, if you're good with that, if you're fine with that, there's a place for it, but just know what you're getting yourself into and why truly earned media with a journalist where they're writing something organic and truly, genuine about you might be a more powerful or potent thing to be going after. You just have to be willing to be a little more patient for that, possibly a little bit more expensive of a route to go. But you have to just sort of weigh your options as far as what will truly get you closer to your goals.
And do you ever know if you're ready for the PR? And I'll tell you why I asked that question, because I did the whole advertorial thing with Podcast Magazine, and I bought me a spot in Podcast Magazine. Sarah,
I didn't know that.
It's $250. I couldn't pass it up. So yeah, and in all honesty, every article in Podcast Magazine at the time was a paid spot. So every article was. There wasn't a single piece that was written, unless it was like Jordan Belfort, because they picked him up a couple of times, and you had some big celebrities on the cover. They didn't buy for it, but everybody else, every other
the 40 under whatever. Or
no, I did not pay for that one. I was in there twice. Okay, so that's a great example, because I forgot about that too. So I'm learning so much. I did pay for my first spot in Podcast Magazine, but at the time, I wasn't ready for that kind of exposure. I didn't have a solid brand. I didn't have these beautiful teeth. I didn't have, I weighed nearly 350 pounds. I was a big sloppy piece of crap. And I put myself out there, and it was just it was more damaging to me and my credibility than anything else, because I wasn't ready. Now, to the second point, there was a list of over 40 influencers in the podcast space. And I did get on that and did not pay for that. But so that one's legit, Sarah. But I did pay for this one, and I wasn't ready. So how do you know? And should you avoid getting PR, looking for PR, or hiring a PR firm before you know you're ready?
I think it's fair to still, have conversations with PR agencies when you're considering it. And a good PR agency should be honest with you that they don't think you're quite ready yet.
There you go.
They shouldn't take you on if they think, hey, we need to see some of these other pieces in place before we're ready to say yes and go ahead and move forward. And to me, that's exactly when you bring in a branding agency to say, we need to back up a little bit. Let's do some of the work to actually make sure your visual identity, your messaging, everything is really, really pulled together and cohesive. And that is some of those foundation, building blocks that we want to see in place before we say, okay, we're ready to start putting you out there to the media.
Are there some, so when I was working in financial advising, I know like a list of red flags of if a financial advisor says this to you, run. So what are the like red flags of, because you said a good PR agency will do this. How do you know if it's a good one? Like, are there red flags that they say this and you just know, walk away?
Yeah. If they're promoting the Marlboro Man, run away.
Yeah, Mom.
I'm sure he was a lovely gentleman. No, I think the biggest one to me is when they guarantee results. I think that is a clear sign that they're buying, segments. They're just, they've got their cost to do what they do, and then they're marketing up by, XYZ a percentage. And then they're saying, yep, we'll guarantee 5 pieces. There's no finesse or skill or talent involved in that at all for a PR agency. And they're not in that capacity. They're not going to be treating you as if they are a partner with you in the growth of your company. Like, to us, we feel like we are, your in-house PR and marketing department, that we want you to rely on us to ask us, questions. We want to consult with you. We want to know how the business is going. But if they say, hey, we'll guarantee 5 pieces and here's the amount and this is it, they're just going to be cut and dry, in and out. They don't want any more time wasted with you as a client than what they absolutely have to do. So to me, I think that's a big red flag if they say we'll guarantee coverage. And then in general, it's the same as shopping for any other service. Like, find somebody who you'd want to grab dinner with. Find somebody who you feel like is going to be a cheerleader for you and your brand. If you don't enjoy talking to them, if you don't feel like they get you and they can speak your language and really, enjoy spending time with them, you're probably not going to like how they present you to media or how they tell your story. And that's, one of the most important components of hiring an agency.
No, I love that, because a firm that I may have already mentioned in this conversation guarantees 30 placements in 30 days. And that's their pitch. And yeah, you do get 30 placements, but they're, maybe 5-minute segments. But, matter of fact, a lot of folks that work with this company, they sit down one morning and they do like 10 spots on 10 different radio stations across the country. And, they're 30-second spots, and that's a placement. And while you're getting some exposure there, I personally don't really see a whole lot of value in those short bursts of me just giving my take on whatever the hot topic of the day is. It doesn't do anything from my perspective. I'm building your brand, building your company, and really reinforcing you as a thought leader in your niche. So, but it shocked me because that was the first time I'd ever talked to a PR agency. And he's like, yeah, I'll do 30 placements in 30 days. Then I talked to others. They're like, well, we'll get you 2 or 3 spots a month. And I was like, what? What's the difference here? But I think you've done a great job here presenting what the difference there is. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, 100%. And again, it really just goes back to what your goals are. If that 30 placements in 30 days is going to be a quick burst that you just want to be able to say, yep, did it, check that box, there's a place for that. But I think that we want to be a long-term partner with you in your business. And, we don't just do PR, we do a lot of other facets. So we want to add in, components of, like we talked about, how do you cross-pollinate that PR coverage? How do you make sure that it has the most, longevity and benefit to you and your brand? So as we start layering things in over months and years of working together, eventually we want you to feel like, okay, I have a really comprehensive, robust marketing plan. So we're not putting all of our eggs in just one basket.
Aquila, I was on your website and I noticed that, I didn't see any dudes on there. So do you primarily work with women?
We do. Yeah. I would say female founders are a little bit of our specialty. We always say we'll work with the dudes as long as they're cool, as long as they don't mind having a bunch of women telling them what to do. So yeah, we're happy to, mix it up, but female founders are really where our passion lie. And the best part, I think, is that, 99.9% of the time, a female founder is also going to be a total badass at what she does. There's no average, female founder. Like, they're all disrupting. They're doing really amazing, cool things. They're doing, more often than not, something different than their male counterparts. And so we really feel like, number one, that gives us a huge advantage in the media, that not only are they a female in a man's world, but they're also doing something unique and different and cool. And then number two, it just is so gratifying for us to tell those stories and give them more visibility.
No, I think I love that. And say, I don't want to cut you off. Go ahead.
No.
Touche. Oh,
go ahead.
No, I'm going to go. No, you go.
Age before beauty.
No, you hang up first. You. Okay. I was just going to say that, no, I love working with women, and I do a ton of work for the eWomen's Network. I mean, I'm a speaker for eWomen. So I travel all across the country speaking at eWomen hubs, and I'm getting ready to go to Phoenix next month and Calgary a couple weeks after that. So I think it's super cool that you focus primarily on women. And people ask me all the time, why are you so involved with eWomen? And it's that exact same reason. Women are there to do business. They're there to rock and roll. They're there to disrupt things. And that's what I like to think that I'm there to do as well. So it's very cool to work in that same environment. When you work with dudes, and granted, I'm 52, so my whole testosterone days, I'm pretty low T these days. Okay. So, but it's just always ego there, man. And I don't have time for that. I'm trying to grow a business. I'm trying to grow a brand, and I don't need to get into an ego match with you. And I love just working with women because, like you said, they're there to do business. So, Sarah, with that, I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry.
You're fine. No, when I first got into advertising and marketing, my first job was at an ad agency in Baltimore, and I was kind of expecting, like, everyone, when I would say I'm like an advertising copywriter, they're like, "Oh, you're like Mad Men." Like that TV show about the ad world. And that show showed how much of advertising was just dog eat dog man's world. Yep. And the first agency that I worked for was 100% women internally. We worked, the clients were whatever they wanted to be, but internally everything was women. And it was so interesting to see the lack of ego, because that was something, I mean, I'd interned at different agencies, interned at like internal marketing departments and all of it. And I had to actually say the sentence, "Being a woman is not a political statement," when I worked marketing for a financial company. I won't say who they were, but it rhymes with Terran or finance. But when I worked with all women, there was no ego. It was just best idea wins, and it doesn't matter who had it.
Mm-hmm.
Versus I had seen so many things like, oh no, this has to be the best idea because it was mine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was so interesting. Like,
yeah.
I'm sorry, Larry.
You're not hurting my feelings. I'm totally fine with it. Totally cool. So again, I think that's why Sarah and I work so well together as well. So Aquila, tell everybody where they can find out more about you, find out more about Haute in Texas, and how they can work with you.
Absolutely. So our website is HIT PR, so HIT.PR.com. You can find me on almost all social media networks at Haute in Texas. And you mentioned earlier it's spelled a little different, so it's HAUTEI in Texas.
Is that pronounced Haute?
Is it Haute? I'm sitting here. You let me say hot like 3 times and you didn't correct. You're like, he's saying it wrong, but I'm not going to say shit. I'm just going to let him embarrass himself.
We always say if you're, fancy schmancy and the French, fashion couture, it's haute couture. But I think that, we 100% started it because it's a play on words that it is hot in Texas. So we let people, you could say it either way.
Just let people embarrass themselves. It's cool.
Yep. Just a little inside joke that we like to play and just laugh at you internally. Yeah, absolutely.
Especially if you're a dude. So once again, hitpr.com is where they can find out all about you and look into your services too. So I really appreciate you joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much. I had a great time.
Cool deal. Hey, everybody, if you had a great time and you want to learn more about Hit PR, check them out. But in the meantime, if you want to learn more about us, hit that subscribe button so we can continue to bring you these amazing episodes each and every week. And with that, I'm Larry Roberts.
I'm Sarah Lucy, and we'll talk to you next week.